What's up, Wizards? It's Dev. So you've got yourself one of these. Crap. So you got yourself one of these, I mean to say, a Magic the Gathering Foundation starter collection box. It's a pretty nice little box, you lucky dog. You've been through the whole thing. You're pretty excited about it. Want to build yourself some decks, but you have no idea where to start. Maybe some standard decks? They give you 4 Llanowar Elves. There's got to be something there, but you're a little bit more adventurous, and you think to yourself, hot diggity donkey self, I want to build some commander decks, but can you even build a good commander deck out of this less than 500 card box? No, but what you can do is build some decent commander decks, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So whether it's your first commander deck of all time or your 300th, I'm really just here to give you something entertaining to watch. But also informative. I had to convince myself it's informative or my entire worldview shatters, and I can't do YouTube anymore. So with all that said, let's get to the fun stuff. Let's look at 3 commander decks you can build right out of this little box right here. All right, we got this bad boy right here. Let's go ahead and tear it up. Why don't we take a look at what all commanders we even have available to us. All right, here are all the commanders laid out on the table that you get in the box. I counted a total of 18, although I did end up with a copy of Giada, Font of Hope as well. I actually got a couple of copies of these out of the booster packs that come in the box, but I didn't want to count those because not everyone will get them. Now, first of all, I don't think that you should build a monocolored commander out of this box because that will leave you with some really, really bad card quality on the whole. So if you take out all of those, it looks like this. Bam, there it is. There's a total of 9 options for a multicolored commander out of this box, but I think we can actually cut it down a little bit more from here because I don't think we need Prime Speakers of Garna, Ruby Daring Tracker, or really even Helena and Elena partners. That leaves us with 6 options that I believe are actually okay, but I'm going to cut it down one more time from here and just select 3 of these. All of these look like pretty good commanders, especially Ramos Dragon Engine, but that's the first cut I'm going to make because it's a 5-color commander. Jeez Louise, macaroni and cheese. That's ridiculous. You probably can't build that, at least with the mana base, out of this box, so I'm pretty sure it's right out. Aurelia the War Leader is pretty tempting. I like aggro decks, but honestly, I just feel like there are 4 more commanders I'd rather build with than Aurelia. Now, when it comes to Tatiova, Benthic Druid, this is an all-time fun commander that a lot of people like to play with, but again, out of this box, I'm not sure how effective it's actually going to be. There is some good green ramp, I guess, and you even get Rampaging Balos and a couple of other landfall things like Primeval Bounty, but altogether, I'm not sure that it's entirely worth it, considering some of the other synergies that we can get from these 3 leftover commanders here. These are the ones that I think we want to build around fresh out of this box. We've got Garna, Bloodfist of Keld, Ovika, Enigma Goliath, and Ailey, Eternal Pilgrim. Let's get to brewing. Now, we'll start with Ailey, because of course we will. If you know anything about my channel, you know I'm going to start with Ailey. So what this is a 2-mana 2/3 Death Touch, but you can also pay a mana and sacrifice another creature to gain life equal to that creature's toughness. And it also has this mode on it where you can pay 3 mana and sacrifice another creature to exile a non-land permanent, but you can only do that if you have 10 or more life, more than your starting life total. Now, one of the real reasons I'm choosing to build this one first is because I'm pretty sure you got a nice little life gain package in white and black already available to you just straight out of the box when you open this thing up. But before we get to all of those cards, I'm actually going to go ahead and point out some artifacts that I'm going to put into basically every single one of these decks, and I think you should too. Now, there are 8 of these in total. You see the Soul Ring and the Arcane Signet. Those are more or less definite certainties in most commander decks, but especially in these because it doesn't really get much better in terms of card quality in this entire box. But there's also Swiftfoot Boots, Cultivator's Caravan, Hedron Archive, Basilisk Collar, Mazemind Tome, and Gilded Lotus. All of these are very, very good cards, again, in terms of overall card quality, and just about any commander deck can leverage them, but especially ours, considering these are going to be some of the best cards in our deck no matter what. We're actually not done with artifacts quite yet, though. The deck plays a couple of other ones out of this box, like Ravenous Amulet, which will allow us to sacrifice some creatures. Deck wants to do that on occasion, but we also get to play Diamond Mare, which gains life, which the deck totally wants to do all the time, no matter what. Now, we'll start in white because that's where most of our life gain stuff is going to come from in this deck, like Hinterland Sanctifier. They give us a card this powerful. we're going to play it. But we also have a Johnny's Pride Mate in here to take advantage of all this life gain. Healer's Hawk to provide some of that life gain. Inspiring Overseer to do the same while also drawing us some cards, something we want to do in our Commander deck. We've got Charming Prince in here as well to gain some life. And Fumigate as a panic button that gains some life, something that we definitely want. I think that one of the strongest cards in white in this box is Fumigate. So I know it looks like we're playing too many creatures for Fumigate, like already, even though we haven't seen that much of the deck. But trust me, you want a sweeper. Why not? Angel of Vitality is also in here, though. This is a nice little life gain booster for us. And Joust Through is in the deck as well, a sort of removal spell that will gain life on our opponent's turn and trigger our Pride Mate, and that's kind of nice. As far as not life gain stuff, though, white has just generically powerful cards like Angelic Destiny. If you can stick this to something, it'll make that thing threatening almost no matter how big it was to begin with. Felidar Retreat is in here, a nice little landfall thing that'll give us value turn over turn. Disenchant is just a catch-all thing that destroys a bunch of different permanent types. You might need to do that. Divine Resilience will protect a creature from now and again, I guess is the phrase I'm looking for. Either your commander or maybe your Pride Mate. Helpful Hunter is in here because it's a little creature that draws cards. Celestial Armor will also help you prevent your dudes from dying to removal and stuff. Valorous Stance will also prevent your dudes dying to removal but kill larger stuff. Stasis Snare will kill just about any creature you need to at instant speed. Knight of Grace is in here because, you know, you're probably going to control some black permanents, so that's pretty sick. Stroke of Midnight is in here as real catch-all removal. This blows everything up. Make a Stand to make sure they can't blow your stuff up. Mentor of the Meek to draw some cards because we got enough small creatures in here. For instance, if we play a Regal Caracal, we can draw a couple of cards if we have extra mana. And a Mentor of the Meek, I like it. But Regal Caracal also just gains a bunch of life off of Hinterland Sanctifier. You know the deal. Same thing with Cat Collector. This is a great benefit for gaining life. One of the best in the entire deck, actually. Whenever we gain life during our turn, at least once per turn, during our turn, we get like a 1/1 guy. And that's really, really cool. But there's also resolute reinforcements to make sure that we can actually put little dudes into play. Same thing with Savannah Lions, just a strong creature in the early game that puts a body on the table and is good with Hinterland Sanctifier and such. And finally, Devout Decree, which looks a little bit weird, but there's almost always going to be a target for this at the table somewhere. And I'd rather play it than just, I guess I'll throw another body in here for the sake of having another body in here. No, you learn to play removal. Now's a good time. Now, onto the black cards, and I know I said that white had most of the life gain and life gain payoffs, but black has plenty of cards that care about that stuff too, like Marauding Blight Priest, an amazing little life gain payoff that hits your opponent whenever you gain life. Null Priest of Oblivion gets back important creatures while also being a life linker. Vengeful Blood Witch is like the whole reason I wanted to buy this box in the first place, but you know, you get to play this and Hinterland Sanctifier in the same deck, and for some reason that just feels really fun to me. But this is going to do a lot of damage and gain a lot of life over the course of the game. Vampire Nighthawk is in this thing. That allows you to gain some life because of the life link. Vampiric Rites is in this thing, man. That's pretty good. That gains you life and draws you cards. Tribute to Hunger is in here to be a removal spell that gains you some life. Sanguine Indulgence allows you to bring creatures back from your graveyard for a really low cost if you've gained enough life, and it's pretty easy to gain that much life, especially with stuff like Exsanguinate in the deck. This can just be a one shot to finish everybody off if you've got them all within range, and I like that. Midnight Snack is in here, kind of experimental, but there's plenty of creatures to attack with to get the raid bonus every turn, and once you do gain enough life, this can just one shot some people too. Moment of Craving is in here, a removal spell that gains life. We will absolutely take that. But there's some generically powerful cards in black too, like Dread Summons here, which can just put a ton of zombies onto the table for you. You'll take that, especially if you do have a Hinterland Sanctifier. Undying Malice is in here to make sure that our important creatures stay on the table. Stab is just decent removal that usually finds a target. Eaten Alive is a way to sacrifice a creature so that you'll get those Vengeful Blood Witch triggers. That feels good. Feed the Swarm is in here just to catch all against creatures and enchantments in black, and for gaining enough life, I feel like we can lose a couple of points from time to time. Gatekeeper of Malakir is a way to put a body on the table while also making your opponent sack creatures, and you get a trigger off of Vengeful Blood Witch when you sack a guy, sure. Massacre Worm is in here. Speaking of generically powerful cards a second ago, you just want to play this. Hero's Downfall is a great removal spell. Knight of Malice kind of goes with the Knight of Grace, right? You're probably going to control white permanents, so let's play this. Desecration Demon is in here for a large creature that amounts to effective removal. Midnight Reaper, again, if we're losing some life, we don't really care because we're gaining enough to offset it. And this draws a bunch of cards. Wishclaw Talisman is just, a demonic tutor a bunch of times. I'll take that. Infestation Sage is a small, good fodder creature to sacrifice. This guy right here, Arbiter of Woe, he gains you some life some of the time, but also he allows you to sacrifice a creature and put a big flyer into play. I like that. Revenge of the Rats, well, there's enough creatures in this deck that this is actually pretty sick in the late game, and again goes well with a Hinterland Sanctifier. Pulse Tracker will gain us a little bit of life, or not really, but it makes our opponents lose life, and I kind of like that because it's like a 1-mana guy that sort of has the ability to deal 4 damage when you look at it sideways. Stromkirk Blood Thief is in here. Well, if there's no other vampires out, at least it can grow, but there's plenty of other vampires in the deck. But final card, we got Zombify in here to bring back important creatures. Just finishing the deck off with 4 extremely key cards here: Lyra Dawnbringer, Linden Steadfast Queen, Mortify, and Fiendish Panda. I just wanted to put like a special spotlight on these, mostly because I didn't have room on screen for some of the other cards, but also because these are easily some of the best cards in our deck in terms of card quality. Fiendish Panda is just in the Johnny's Pridemate on Super Roids, so we'll take that. Mortify is one of the best removal spells you'll get in the entire box of cards here. Linden Steadfast Queen is the real way to set off all of our life gain triggers for real, for real. And then Lyra Dawnbringer, sure, there's other angels in the deck. She'll give them lifelink. We'll gain even more life. We'll have a great time. Little party. That'll be nice. Let's stay the night. That'll be good. But also, Lyra Dawnbringer is just a big, dumb, flying threat that once it's on the table, your opponent kind of has to deal with, or you just kind of carry the game off of it. So yeah, all 4 of these cards are ridiculous. Now, the next thing I think you can build with is Ovika right here, this Enigma Goliath lady. She's 7 mana in Izzet for a 6/6 flying ward 3, and they have to pay 3 life too. And check out this text box. Whenever you cast any non-creature spell at all, you get a bunch of 1/1 goblins, and how many goblins you get is determined by the mana value of the spell that you cast. So cast a 1-drop spell, get a 1/1 goblin, cast a 3-drop spell, get 3 1/1 goblins. Feels really, really good once you start actually rocking and rolling with this thing. Now, of course, I shouldn't have to remind you here, but just like all the other decks, we're playing the artifacts you might expect us to play, like Hedron Archive, Cultivator's Caravan, Gilded Lotus, Arcane Signet, right? Soul Ring, you might imagine, is in the deck, and you would imagine correctly. These are all big mana, and we're playing a 7-mana commander that also wants us to spend a bunch of mana once it's on the table, so we're going to play all the big mana we possibly can, but once she's on the table, we need to protect her as much as possible, even though she's got those ward stats. We kind of don't care. Swiftfoot Boots is really good insurance. Basilisk Collar can even go on one of these 1/1 goblins and be fine. And then Mazemind Tome is going to gain us some cards and life. But there's also other artifacts in this deck, some of which also provide mana. Like, for instance, Burnished Heart over here. This will provide ramp for us. Heraldic Banner will make the goblins and Ovika a little bit bigger, which is kind of cool, but also provide ramp. Meteor Golem takes advantage of all the ramp we have by blowing up permanents. Steel Hellkite takes advantage of all the ramp we have by blowing up permanents. That's an interesting phrase to have to say twice in a row. There's a lot of ways to take advantage of all the mana in the deck. All right, now there's a couple of gold cards that we definitely want to try out in this deck, and there's really only a couple of Izzet cards they give us in the whole box, but I guess we'll play both of them, Teach by Example and Enigma Drake. Now, this is mostly going to be a spell-slinging deck. Do not let the 7-mana commander confuse you here. This is definitely going to be a deck with a whole bunch of little spells in it. That's what we want to be doing, so Enigma Drake's going to be huge, and Teach by Example has plenty of things to copy. Now, starting with the red cards here, this is where we're going to get a lot of our removal, but we also get cool stuff like Dragon Fodder, right? This puts a bunch of bodies on the table. If we have an Ovika on the table, it puts twice as many bodies on the table. Crackling Cyclops is in here to take advantage of all the spells we're throwing around. Goblin Negotiations will kill stuff. I like that. We need to do that from time to time. Bolt Bin goes in pretty much every red commander deck if you can find a slot for it. Hoarding Dragon is in here. Pretty good when you consider we've got a ton of artifacts in this deck, and a lot of them we want to go seek out. A Braid will also kill stuff. I like removal spells in my Magic deck. Burst Lightning, ditto. This will also kill stuff. Thrill of Possibility keeps our hand a little bit fresher. I like that. Crash Through seems a little bit weird, but I guess I'll take 1 mana for 1 drawn card. We want stuff like that in this deck. Dragon Mage also looks a little weird, costs a lot of mana, but we've got big mana in the deck. We want to be able to use it on more than 1 or 2 cards, and Dragon Mage will certainly keep our hand fresh if we can hit for combat damage. Heartfire Immolator is in here, kind of a removal spell that, again, the prowess is really good on this. Obliterating Bolt is a more than serviceable removal spell. well. Goblin Surprise, that puts a bunch of bodies on the table too, but it's also Alpha Strike if we play it correctly. Seismic Rupture is a great sweeper in the early game. What? There's a ghost in the room. I don't know why that happened. And then Dragon Master Outcast is in here because if it's on the table for enough turns, it gives us a bunch of 5/5s. Pretty good deal. And then Gratuitous Violence. This is awesome in the later game. With all of our tiny little goblins, they effectively hit for double the damage. Now, moving to blue, you might think I'm going to show you a bunch of spells, and like I am, but there's also stuff like Tolarian Terror straight out of the box here, which is an ideal creature for a deck like this, so you play it. But yeah, we got like Think Twice in here. That's 2 spells in one card. Really good with Ovika. An Offer You Can't Refuse is just great for stopping non-creature spells for a really low cost. Shipwreck Dowser, not the absolute best body in terms of how much you're paying for it, but you will get an important instant or sorcery back from your yard. You'll take that. Spectral Sailor is in here to draw some cards at a lowish cost. Faebloom Trick will put bodies on the table and also more bodies on the table. That joke again. Clickwant Sky Mage. We're playing a bunch of spells that draw cards in this thing, so this will get huge if left unchecked. Mocking Sprite will make our spells a lot cheaper to cast. Finale of Revelation will draw a ton of cards. We kind of want that. It also puts a buttload of goblins, scientific term, buttload of goblins on the table if you have an Ovika. We spend enough mana. Refute is just a hard counter that gets deeper into our deck. Dictative Crufix draws us more cards, and we want that in a deck like this. We're just trying to play as many spells as possible. Witness Protection, or Larry the Cable Guy's Witless Protection, depending on if you're wanting to have a terrible movie night, is just a decent removal spell in a deck like this. It can take out anything. Unsummon is decent tempo. Curator of Destinies does not come in the box, but I got it out of a booster pack, so you can bet your patootie I'm playing it in this deck. Essence Scatter is a nice hard counter. Mischievous Mystic is an amazing way to put more bodies on the table if I guess you needed to do that. Opt is in here, because of course it is. Into the Royal is a nice pseudo removal spell that also draws us cards. Confiscate, take anything from anybody. Let's go. Negate, another amazing hard counter. The opposite of an Essence Scatter, but they're both hard counters. Rite of Replication can do a lot of work for you in this deck if you're targeting the right things. Dive Down can save your Ovika from certain doom. Chart of Course draws a bunch of cards. We'll take that. Harbinger of the Tides is a little bit of tempo, and we'll take another body. Tempest Djinn is huge. I like that all day. Voracious Great Shark is also large and is to a hard counter. Sphinx of the Final Word, rather. This isn't a counter, but it can't be countered. It's also a huge guy. Again, let's take advantage of this big mana. And then finally, Brineborn Cutthroat. We are casting an awful lot of cards on our opponent's turn. Let's be rewarded for it, I guess? Sure. But just like the last deck, there's 4 cards that I want to shine a special spotlight on here. They are right here, baby. Now, some of these are just really good cards, and then others are specifically good in this deck, like Gutter Snipe over here, which will give us damage. It'll just give us some damage whenever we play instants and sorceries. That'll kill everyone really fast. Pyromancer's Goggles is in here. This will copy spells we cast and is also ramp. I was talking about how much we needed that earlier. I wasn't lying. Impact Tremors is great if you have an Ovika out because, you know, it does a bunch of damage whenever you play spells, basically. That's how combos work. And then River's Rebuke is just a ridiculously powerful card that kind of functions as a wrath effect in this deck. But finally, we got Mama G over here, little Garna, the Blood Fist of Keld. This is the one I'm actually most excited to build with, but again, it's kind of exactly like a bunch of other decks that I have right now. So I guess I have some experience building with stuff like this. Let's see if we can pull it off. Now, first of all, we're going to play all of these. Remember how I've been showing you these basically the entire video with the Gilded Lotus, the Swiftfoot Boots, the Soul Ring, the Basilisk Collar, the Maze Mind Tome. We got the Cultivator's Caravan, the Hadron Archive, the Arcane Signet. We're going to play all of those. They're in every single deck. You probably know that by now. But there is another artifact I'm playing in this deck. It's Fire Shrieker over here. This can just give a creature double strike when we equip it up. And since we're going to be doing a lot of attacking in this deck for sure, I think it's an important card to play. While we're at it, I guess I'll still play Pyromancer's Goggles. We might as well. Again, this is ramp and we'll, you know, double our removal spells. Why not do that? But as far as the gold cards, again, we only have a couple of options in Rakdos, but this time they're really powerful. Perforating Artist and Immersturm Predator are both in here. Predator is a great way of like sacking creatures, getting some value off of Garna some of the time, but also just having a dude that's hard to shake. You can't get rid of this guy. But Perforating Artist is going to give some opponents a pretty hard time if you can manage to attack, and that's all this deck wants to do anyway, so it shouldn't be too hard to figure out. Now, as far as the red cards in this deck, it's it's mostly a case of second verse, same as the first, right? We've got stuff like Dragon Master Outcast in here because it's just that good. Heartfire Immolator is a nice body that's also a removal spell. Those are typically great. Gratuitous Violence is obviously a ridiculous magic card, even better in this deck than it is in the last one we played. Burst Lightning is a nice utility magic card. Obliterating Bolt is a nice utility removal spell. Thrill of Possibility will keep our hand fresh, right? Bolt of Belpin, I already talked about how good that is. Goblin Negotiations will put creatures on the board. In our We Want Creatures on the Board deck, Impact Trimmers is in here to go with the Goblin Negotiations. That's a fun little combo I didn't discuss last time. We've got a bunch of non-creature stuff in here, don't we? So I guess we'll do Gutter Snipes. We cast instead of sorceries, we're dealing even more damage. Goblin Surprise puts goblins onto the table. We can attack with those, and obviously, if we have enough stuff attacking, we can just win the game. Crash Through is also in this deck. Again, we're better at attacking in this deck, so Crash Through is even better. Hoarding Dragon is just a big dude. He's like a 4/4 flyer that can also get his card advantage, or at least selection. We'll go with that. Dragon Fodder is again in this deck. We're trying to attack with creatures. Seismic Rupture is in here, which again looks weird in a deck with a bunch of creatures that's trying to get aggressive, but I'm a sucker for a sweeper and commander. Let me just put it that way. And then finally, Abrade is a red card we want to play, and I shouldn't really have to explain it too much. That said, there are some red cards we didn't play in the last deck that we're playing in this one, like Stormkirk Noble. This attacks very well. In some ways, it's actually one of the better creatures in the entire deck. It gets huge over the course of a few turns. It ain't bad. But Spitfire Legak is in here. This doesn't attack as well, but does deal a lot of damage over the course of a few turns. It's basically an Iridescent Vine Lasher you have to pay way more for. This thing right here, Ravenous Giant, is a Juzam Djinn if you look at it hard enough. If you don't know what a Juzam Djinn is, it's a Ravenous Giant. Vaishino Pyromancer is also in here. This will do a bunch of damage to the opponents, or at least 2 damage. Giant Cindermaw is in here. Pretty good against that life gain pile, but actually pretty good on terms of rate against like anything. Fanatical Firebrand attacks pretty well in the early game and is also a pseudo removal spell. Strongbox Raider is a body that will draw you cards. Let's go. Taurian Mauler is just a nice little dude that gets huge over the course of the game. And then Ball Lightning, you want a good attacker? This is a good attacker right here, baby. Do a lot of damage with this guy. Now, before we get to the black cards in this deck doesn't really have like a powerful cards section. I have to go ahead and admit that to you right now. But Redcap Gutter Dweller is actually one of the better cards in all of red for this deck, just because it puts a bunch of creatures onto the table. That's like the best reason, but it does a whole bunch of other cool stuff for a deck like this. But a board in a box is really good for a deck that wants a bunch of small creatures. But on to the black cards here, and it's a third verse, same as the first in this case, because, you know, just like a lot of those red cards were in the red deck, a lot of these black cards were in that black deck, but you just can't argue with card quality like Massacre Worm. Why would you not play this if you had access to it, right? And you didn't have access to better stuff? I'd say this is... yeah, you do it. You've also got the Gatekeeper of Malakir in here, a body on a removal spell, or a removal spell on a body. I'll let you decide. Undying Malice will protect your commander and other stuff. Exsanguinite, I still think is worth playing in this deck. I really do. In the late game, it's great. You've got Vampire Nighthawk, a great attacker in here. Tribute to Hunger, we're not trying to gain too much life, but this is still a removal spell into the day. Vengeful Blood Witch is in here to take advantage of, you know, the fact that we're trying to sack stuff. Like, this is a Garna deck. Garna's kind of a blood artist in and of herself if we use her correctly, so it's even better in a deck like this than it was in Ailey. This right here, Null Priest of Oblivion will get important creatures like Blood Witch back. Zombify will get important creatures like Null Priest of Oblivion back. We got Arbiter of Woe in here, so along with the Zombify, we maybe can engineer a situation where we drop this in our yard, get it back later. Not too bad. Desecration Demon is a great attacker. This is also going to remove dudes. Hero's Downfall's in the deck. Feed the Swarm is in the deck. Play Removal. Eaten Alive is in here. Again, we're kind of an Aristocrats deck, a sacrifice deck, right? So Eaten Alive's definitely good. Dread Summons will give us a bunch of creatures to sacrifice and attack with for what that's worth, and it's worth a lot in a Garna deck. Moment of Craving, again, we're not trying to gain life. It's just a decent removal spell. Pulse Tracker, we are trying to attack, and this does that. Wishclaw Talisman will get us important cards. Vampiric Rites will get us important cards. Stab will remove creatures, sure. Infestation Sage, even better in a Garna deck than it is in an Ailey deck some of the time. Stromkirk Blood Thief, again, what vampires we are playing, this will help get it more swole. We got Midnight Reaper to draw a bunch of cards in a deck like this. Revenge of the Rats to make a bunch of creatures, why not? But we also have Driver of the Dead and Duress in here. Cards that we weren't playing in the last deck, but I think Duress will help clear the path for attacks a little bit more likely. And Driver of the Dead right here looks a little bit weird, but we've got tons of small creatures in the deck that we can get back with this. And that is the third deck, ladies and gentlemen. I could keep going, but I think you get my point, although I really would like to build that Aurelia deck, but I don't think you want to see the same red cards over and over. Sorry I didn't do a green deck. Again, I think you could do Tatyova, but the landfall options just aren't enough in this box. But that said, I think you could do Tatyova with minimal tinkering and buying of very cheap cards. But all that said, this is all I've got to show you in terms of cards and such today. Let's go back to Couch Dev. Hey, wasn't that a fun ride? We're back on the couch now. Hey, everybody. You going to build any of those decks? I think I'm probably going to keep that Garna deck together, and then I'll have 4 commander decks that all effectively do the same thing. That'll be great. Or if you're building one of those things that we didn't build, let me know about that down there in the comments too. You like Aurelia, Tatyova, even Ramos? There's got to be something you can build out of this thing with Ramos. Not sure if it'll work, but you build something. How are you going to upgrade them? Like, there's a lot to discuss just because of this little box right here. And I was honestly like, hashtag not sponsored, like a little bit impressed with exactly how much value you're getting from this thing. But that's really all I've got for now, guys. Just let me know how you felt about everything. And if you want to, you can check out the Patreon. Link in the description. But if you don't want to go that far, you can leave a tip down there in the comments. Whatever you want to do. It's all welcome. Happy New Year if you're watching this in the new year. If it's 3 months after I upload this video that you're watching it, it's still more or less the new year. Happy New Year to you. Aside from that, like the video. It's the button shaped like a thumb. You can also subscribe to the sandwich. I need more subscribers. Yum. Anyway, that's about all I've got, guys. So I will catch you cats later. I've been Deb from the place. I'm still Deb from the place. Every moment I am Deb from the place. Anyway, that's all I've got for now, guys. I'll catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.